Grice seems to revel in the reputation of being as much of a nuisance as he can be. He says, that's my job, you know. I'm out there to fight, to have a race, and he just loves it. If he can make life a little bit more difficult for somebody, make them work a little bit harder, perhaps blow their car up, go into driving error or whatever, well, it suits him fine. And certainly the crowd love it. And the gap at this stage across the start-finish line is 4.48 seconds. That's third to fourth place. Fifth place is still the Richards BMW. Sixth place is the Crosby Holden Commodore for Bob Jane. Seventh place is Peter Williamson in the Supra, and he is 4 laps behind the race leader. And then in eighth place, car number 36, it's Murray Carter. There's third place. Grice will be looming bottom of screen, not quite. It's 4.48. Making life very difficult for Peter Brock. As George Fury's in.
The youngest man in the motor race, Glenn Seaton, and leading the event, is in for his security stop. 4.5 seconds, but look, he's taken the bottle with him. They're running after it. That's the waste bottle that actually catches any overflow. And it was one of, it was the Network Alpha team that raced ahead, pulled off the bottle for the Peter Stuyvesant team. Well, there you go. They were ahead by a lap, and for the sake of saving 1 second, they lost about 30. 4.5 seconds the stop.
And Fred Gibson goes stalking after the man responsible. I think perhaps Glenn Seaton might have been the man responsible.
The bald head of Freddie Gibson, and how life's changed for him. By gee, remember him running a yellow and black Lotus Elan number 44 when he didn't have much money and Neil Allen had a pile, and he kept beating Neil Allen, and Neil Allen kept spending money, and Fred kept saying, what can I do? And he's a very good driver. He got up to driving big 5-litre V8 engine sports cars, and he has managed this team superbly. Cars, as you can see, pretty busy around this racetrack. Our aerial coverage just as difficult to get around the tight switchbacks of Sandown. Here's the race leader. He's on lap 106. It's Glenn Seaton, 21 years old. What a dream.
Brock to Grice for third position, 2.4 seconds.
So 23 laps left at the completion of this circuit for Glenn Seaton. He's a little impatient to get out of the pits. But, he hasn't lost position after the bottle was retrieved. So that's how Glenn Seaton gets around a lap, as seen from our chopper.
Dunlop Bridge repositioned from the old days with his tight right and left. Round past the pit entrance there, and a little bit of a left-hand kink and onto the straight. And look what the chopper's doing. And the intrepid cameraman to stay with this and trying to keep in touch with a turbocharged car down the straight. It turns hard left, a short straight now, down to this right and left, down towards the old Peters or Arco corner, Castrol corner these days, one of the tight corners on the track left, onto the back straight. Old existing part of the racetrack.
And a full 360-degree turn for the chopper on that bottom corner and then up the back straight.
And then
it's not just a matter of following the cars and going in the same direction as them.
It's a very busy time. And they, of course, I understand, as they turn hard left, the cars, now the chopper can sort of wait for them, but again, he's got to spin and spiral. And my understanding of it is that they are the hardest aircraft of all to fly, because you're flying them every instant that you're in the air. They don't sort of glide along on wings or anything. You get a great view of the tightness, the way the circuit switches back on itself. This tight infield section, which was the bit added to the Sandown track to bring it up to an international accepted race length of 3.9 kilometres around. Down the bottom, Dandenong Road corner. And again, rejoining the traditional track. And here we are back at Dunlop Bridge. Roger Dundas, the man doing that job so superbly in the ABC chopper. And the man doing it pretty well down on the ground, in control, Glenn Seaton. And back in close company again after those two pit stops, the longer pit stop for the car in front but in second place that had pulled away a little bit, and the very quick stop for the race leader in car 30 means that they're now in quite close company, and I reckon you'll see them running that way for the next 108 laps completed, 21 to the race end, 503 kilometres in this Castrol 500 race, the third round of the Australian Endurance Championship. And Nissan, whilst their Bluebird turbos were regarded as something of a failure because they certainly did have reliability troubles, despite the fact they set the fastest ever sedan car time around Bathurst with their pole position time of 2 minutes 13.8 a couple of years ago. They won the Australian Endurance Championship a few years back.
Here's our tussle for third position. Just a little more than a second, 1.35 seconds between Peter Brock here in third position. Right behind him, there he is, Alan Grice, pushing as hard as he can push.
Splitting them is the Tony Mulvihill, Ken Matthews Commodore.
Oh!
And there it is, almost taking Grice out, but...
almost taking Brock out.
Yes.
Mulvihill hitting him. Or his co-driver. Let's have a look at Brock's car for damage. Nothing really evident. But let's see how it happened. Brock fairly much minding his own business.
Mulvihill with a brake problem by the appearance of that.
And lucky that Grice was able to avoid him. He luckily had some brakes to stop in time, but I think if Brocky hadn't have been there, then Mulvihill might have gone off the circuit.
Well, I don't know if he actually hit him. He locked up, but I'm not sure if he did actually hit the tail. It certainly was close. I don't think he did. Red Brock was gritting his teeth, thinking this is a bit unfair.
Oh,
two wheels indeed.
Well, this could be some of the best racing of the race between Peter Brock and Alan Grice.
And what a test of skill this is going to be, because the cars will be pretty second-hand by now. The tyres will be pretty saggy. Certainly the drivers will be pretty saggy by this time of the day. Brock will be gritting his teeth. Grice will be laughing his head off.
And Brock will hate it if Alan Grice goes by. Absolutely hate it. And Grice desperately wants results for the Mobil team. He wants Mobil next year. They want results.
Brock's really shutting the corners out here from Grice, covering the shallow line, and as Grice moves out, he's covering that line too. This is really an attack from Grice. Grice using every trick he can. He's got a master to beat. No point really attacking these couple of corners unless Brock makes a little mistake, covering that inside line.
The 05 Commodore looking pretty wide to Alan Grice at the moment. Might see some daylight somewhere here.
Just a couple of horsepower will do wonders for either car in this situation.
This for them is lap 108. The race leader's on 110. He's completed 109.
John White pointing them through, and his little Gemini. Here will be the fun, the end of the main straight.
Grice down the inside.
Had the pick of the spots.
And the crowd go wild in the main
Brock
stand.
taking a wide line. He's going to try and go through. Can't quite squeeze it. Grice moves back across. Now, if Brock can tuck in behind, he'll get a drag up the hill. If there's just a bit left in the engine, or will Brock leave it?
He hasn't got it. Look, the car's not staying with Grice under acceleration. It's nowhere near it.
No way.
Grice is romping away.
Brakes, Brock closes up.
It's always, of course, deceptive because as speeds slow, the physical distance contracts. But in fact, the time's probably not a great deal different. And the time's about 1.4. So that's the situation. Grice and Bailey. Bailey taking the middle stint. The car now back in the hands of Alan Grice, who did the opening stint, up into third place. Brock Moffat back to fourth place and still in fifth. Really out of contention is the Endurance Championship point score leader in both cars and drivers, Jim Richards and BMW.
Now here we could have an interesting situation. A few corners between here and the main straight, which could balk Grice a little, which could close the gap for another duel down the end of the main straight.
Close enough this time, Peter Brock. But there's some traffic in front of Alan Grice, though he might be lucky and get rid of it on the main straight.
There's Graham Bailey in the yellow cap. Craig Denyer, formerly from 2GO radio station, Newcastle, who does their publicity.
The little front drive Toyota there getting in Brock's way. Brock waving like fury. That's another Commodore driver in that Toyota.
Furiously waving or waving like George Fury. But Grice moving away to quite a nice advantage now over Peter Brock. So looking to cement third place. 29 seconds now, the time that Grice has to make up to gain another position, to gain second place on the Nissan. And he has 19 laps in which to do it. Not out of the question by any means. Look at the time he's doing compared to Brock. Grice will be kept informed by his pit crew, and that's why they weren't hopping about so much. They were wondering about the next challenge.
Well, I suppose the imponderable question is what could have Alan Grice, Graham Bailey done if that wheel nut hadn't stayed on the right-hand front when they had problems in the pit earlier on when leading the race.
Yes, Peter, but 2 Fs and 1 button, you'll win anything in motor racing.
Well, there's the leaders. 1, 2, those circulating at the moment in second and first order. Terry Shield in second with Glenn Seaton, the race leader, just behind him.
If they're looking for a form finish, I think they better swap their positions. The photograph will look a lot better with the nice clean car in front and the damaged car behind. Let's see what happens.
In fact, it's
here.
starting to look as though it might go to the front, and he will have a little bit of no good manners at all. Look, soaring down deep under brakes and saying, you make your own arrangements, George. Well, not George Fury, Glenn Seaton. Is the second place car in the race.
Warren Cullen's car, the super salvage car, just keeping at bay a little bit here. But certainly the Skyline drivers won't be making any efforts to shift into a position in front of this and put any danger to the cars at this stage.
26.28 seconds from the car leading this particular parade to Alan Grice in third place. So, in other words, second to third place.
Well, one man who knows the true meaning of anxiety at the moment is Nissan team manager Fred Gibson. Fred, 20 laps to go. You must be feeling pretty terrible.
Still a long way to go, John, isn't there, really? Now it's been a good day for us, a good race so far, so I hope we can last another 20 laps.
Well, it was looking all desperate there from lap 1 when Scotty had his problem.
Yeah, Gary's come back well. He drove a terrific stint in the car, and Terry's done a super job also to come back from where they were, which they were back in about 15th spot. So we've come back in the second spot. We've really, the team's worked well as a pit stop. We've changed the compound tyres on Terry's car, and we've put a churn of fuel in for safety, and we're leading Alan Grice by 27 seconds at present.
I don't mean to sound like the Jonah, but the turbocharged Nissans have never yet won a long-distance classic in Australia.
John smiles, don't be like that. No, I know that's right, and I think we'll try and change today, John. The cars are sort of still going strong, so it's a matter of holding our breath and getting there for 20 more laps.
Currently, they're running nose to tail on the road, Fred. There are some people suggesting you're going for the classic 1-2 victory.
It's not that close to that yet, John. We've got a guy out there, Warren Cullen, who's giving us a bad time. He's being lapped twice, and he's giving us a bad time passing. But once we get past him, we'll be okay. We'll see what happens towards the finish.
In fact, would you suggest to the boys that maybe they put a few seconds between each other just for security?
I'd like to see that happen, actually. I'll be on the radio shortly and speak to them about having to sort of separate themselves a little bit. But no, they're going fine. They understand what's happening. They're getting gaps to Alan Grice. It's a matter of watching what he's doing, really.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, John.
In fact, it's not a matter of having a nice, polite form finish necessarily. And in fact, I think putting the race lead car in front of this car might not be possible, because Grice has made up ground from 26.28 to 1 lap later, 24.6. Grice is flying, and he is catching. Second place car, the leader of this bunch, and that's the Terry Shield, Gary Scott, car number 15.
So it's the leader, second of the two Skylines there, who is virtually a lap in front of the second place man who leads him on the road. So if Seaton can get in front of Shield, he will have lapped everybody in the field. But there's the third man, Grice, who's charging, and no one does it better.
No question of that. Absolutely a charger. And we'll get another measure of this gap very soon. But Alan Grice has done a good job, and if the Nissan team doesn't have a great finishing record, then nor does Alan Grice, for that matter, in major placings, let's say winning long-distance races. Fabulously fast qualifier, a good sprint race man, and at the moment is 24.5. So Glenn Seaton getting the information and holding out on this lap on Alan Grice. So apparently plenty of performance left in the Nissans, and whatever Alan Grice can serve up to them, they can cover. But will one of them? In doing this, Grice has got to get everything out of his car that he possibly can. He's got to take it absolutely 10/10ths, brakes, engine and so on, and could possibly in so doing break the vehicle. The Nissans are doing the opposite. They're covering. They're getting the information from the pits and on radio, and they're just replying, doing the lap times that are necessary to maintain a comfortable buffer. So this is the car under risk. "15 laps remain."
Grice is using just every inch that he can find here. He's up on the curbs on the outside. He's bouncing off the inside. And using every inch there, touching the curb right and right again, sweeping into the main straight, squeezing every ounce of energy into the car before the run into the straight.
George Fury's gone for a bolt. He's passed Gary Scott.
Obviously,
And
the radios
Alan
in the cars
Grice's
are working.
gap, 23.54, a second gained. Yes, you can see there, race leader now leads on the track as well.
Well, a lap still wouldn't get him up there to take third place, would it? What's the gap between second and third?
It's 23.54, so a second gained at last lap by Alan Grice. But it really doesn't need to get critical. They'll give away a second a lap for 16 laps, 16 seconds. That still leaves you with 9 in front at the end. They'll be prepared to let Grice gain a small margin, as long as it's not a big enough margin per lap to be there in front at lap 129.
But Grice would be going for broke anyway, whether he was 3rd, 4th, 10th or 93rd at this stage of the race.
Way out on performance, the Gemini.
John White.
For
There's
sale,
Srenny
$25,000 if you want to go racing, Peter.
Well, I noticed that it just had a shunt in the back, so
Oh,
I'll keep the money in my pocket.
$24,500. John White's been campaigning that car for a few years now, and next year in touring cars you've again got 2 litres, 2.5 and over 2.5 as classes, and it wouldn't run well in the 2 litre class, but it'd be good experience for a new race driver.
Plenty of three-wheeling. Gary Scott back in the car after Terry Shield did the middle stint for him. Shield very much an Amaroo Park specialist, but still doing a great job. Grice now, the next gap is 23.19. Again, it's not enough. It was 23.54, so it's about 0.34 of a second, and that is very small beer compared with the task that's needed.
Any aspirations at all in the Nissan camp to perhaps try and campaign a Skyline overseas?
It's a very interesting point, Peter. Howard Marsden, who really masterminded this and brought it up to this sort of stage as overall team manager with Fred Gibson working with him, has recently gone to Nismo in Great Britain. It's a very major posting, and his brief from Nissan Japan is to review Nissan's overall motorsport involvement. They have a Group C sports racing car for Le Mans and so on, the Nissan engine, producing an enormous amount of power, around 700 odd horsepower. They have rallying as a possibility, World Championship, and they have Group A touring car racing with the possibility of a Group A World Championship next year. As we look at Jim Keogh, broken wheel.
Oh, it may have a broken wheel by the time he gets back to the pits.
Yes, that's right. It's not broken yet, but it's very likely. But the other thing, as I say, is whether to get into Group A World Championship Series next year. Howard Marsden's feeling, it's not fully flat, in fact. Or was it? Was it there? It did seem to be sitting up just a little bit. No, I think he's got the full problem.
There was the story of the lady in England who had a similar problem. In fact, the wheel came right off and she just turned the radio up and travelled 60 kilometres on the motorway on 3 wheels.
Now you'll be in trouble. You can't insult half of any population. I'm not getting into trouble, Peter.
I think Jim Keogh was only doing that to get some coverage for the new motor racing sponsor in Luxaflex and his own carcraft operation.
But as I was saying of Nissan, Howard Marsden is in England, and he said just the week he was leaving, he said, my feeling is that we ought to go to Europe with those cars. As now the Wall Keogh BMW 635 is in for attention. The Melbourne solicitor, Jim Keogh. The thing survived pretty well, actually, back to the pits. Just clearing away a bit of rubber and stuff off the brakes and gets shed.
Often the wheel flopping around like that can cause damage to the suspension.
That's the BMW helmet, incidentally. It's a full-face helmet, and I think he's removed the front section of it. It actually pivots upwards normally anyway, because the German police are under a rule where they must be visible facially to anybody they're talking to in traffic situations. So BMW has developed this helmet where the whole mouthpiece lifts, and here's Alan Grice, the man chasing second place, but with an almost impossible task.
22.8 seconds the gap.
Lap 117 is the leader. Glenn Seaton. Graham Bailey and Alan Grice in third place, in fact, at the moment, behind the other Skyline.
Grice is just nibbling away here, a couple of tenths per lap perhaps. At this rate, he will not pick up another placing. 22.5 seconds there, the last check. He's got a car in front of him blowing a lot of smoke. I think Peter McLeod's Commodore. No, it's the Cullen car.
Commodore.
Maybe that has a tyre problem too. It's certainly travelling very slow.
Quite a number of punctures here today. Of course, this track, when the surface was first laid, was so grippy. Cars in the normal course, instead of sliding, were two-wheeling around corners. They were getting the inside wheels a long way up off the ground as the Volvo comes to a final halt. Well, John Bowe had a pretty good day earlier today. He won the sports car race. He's now wondering what's going on. And it's almost the same picture as last year of that car that locked up. It was John Bowe, it was the Volvo looking under the other side of the car, locked up coming into the pits. Don't know if it's locked up this time, but certainly it's something underneath. And has something happened with car number 15 in second place?
Well, earlier, but
seems not.
Seems to be still circulating. All right, there was some concern that perhaps Shield was having problems in second place.
He's 3.67 seconds behind the race leader, and he's... oh, yes, it's a flat, is it? It's a lock up there, and it was going to tip itself up onto two wheels. It's got some sort of a curious problem, and a fairly severe one.
Soon he leans on it.
So Grice's idea of pressuring the
that
car is a good one.
Left front wheel doesn't look quite right.
Oh, the car is hopping and skipping everywhere. He sure has got a problem. This is second place under enormous threat. It's the left front.
22.9 the gap on last check.
Isn't it the left front that's leaning out?
Yes, that's where the tyre smoke was coming from.
And that was where they had their problem earlier, after the accident, that they had to do some body work in there.
Maybe the solid blow of the shunt up there on that early lap has settled into a bit of fatigue and caused a problem on the suspension.
Fred Gibson saying, "Damn you, Smales." A lovely bloke, Freddie Gibson. Had his own performance tuning business at Randwick. He said, "No way, I don't do race cars. The people in motor racing are dreadful to do business with." But brought down to Melbourne and now resident down here with his lovely wife, Chris Gibson. Chris Cole, the former race driver. Just a delightful person and very, very competent race driver.
21.1 the gap. The problem with this Nissan not making a serious dent in its lap times, and if nothing gets worse, it looks as if it'll struggle through and hold off Alan Grice. Yes. I don't think a pit stop would be in order, because it's going to be a long fix, and the time it takes to get in and out will add to that. Better to stay out there, hang on, and hope that it makes it.
3.67 gap between the two cars has become 4.25. So that's not a massive amount. But he certainly does have to come off a little bit. And just be careful not to stress it so hard where it's hopping and bumping and catching in corners. And as Alan Grice comes by, it's 20.48.
It's not making much of a dent on it. Try as he may.
It's going to get worse rather than better, isn't it? It's the only way the problem will go. I mean, even to the extent that perhaps the wheel might give up entirely.
Or with a big puff of smoke, a big flat spot could wear through and deflate it.
So just 10 laps to go in this 129 lap enduro, and Glenn Seaton seems assured of first place, barring anything going wrong, and there hasn't been a sign of any problem with the leading car, while the second has its problems. And that wouldn't have helped too much, I don't think.
Well, I reckon he reckons if he's got a problem with what the left wheel's doing when it's on the ground, is you bump it off so it's not touching the ground. Of course, it's creating the problem when it's the loaded side in right-hand corners mainly, although the left-hand one down the end of the straight's a problem for it.
Whatever is wrong, he's doing an excellent job in holding it.
Yes, it sure looks second-hand around the front end, jumping up and down like a boxer training.
Terry Shield at the wheel of car 15. This car 30 just goes over the start-finishing line. No. 9 laps to go for the leader.
And that lap cost the second-place Nissan 1.7 seconds.
That would just about put Grice level with Shield if he could keep it going for the last 9 laps.
Well, we get another one here, and 19.5, so Grice has made a second. Still not enough in it, but keep the pressure on and you just don't know. At current rates, everything's under control. We've seen this much of a change. Why can't it change more? Race leader, though, looking absolutely fit and healthy. Superlative run. And I remind us again that that race is being led by a man who'll do more driving than George Fury, who slotted it onto its second grid position yesterday and into first place when it pitted. He's done more driving than, as I say, George, but he comes into the most expensive insurance category because under 25 years old, we know people can't drive, and he's only 21. He's a dill. Except that he seems to me to be doing it pretty well at the moment.
When you look through the front group of cars now, in fact right through the field, it's the cars that have not struck any snags that are doing well. And this car, out of the leading bunch, is the one car that has not had a snag. In fact, it's gone so well, they've had time to make a precautionary pit stop, which did appear was not going to be necessary.
Now the race leader's gap goes out to 5.65, so it's only 600ths advantage for it on that particular lap. 19.51 the arrears of Alan Grice. Here's Alan Grice to give you an idea of the gap back to him, and it's 16 seconds now at the finish line, and 19.34, so only 2/10 for him. So what it amounts to is that driving the second car, the Gary Scott Terry Shield car, Gary Scott in it, the driver is doing a fantastic job and is maintaining his lap time and holding out Alan Grice very successfully.
Of course, it's also possible that Grice hasn't everything his way. He could have his share of troubles. After the best part of 500 kilometres, the car tyres, the car brakes, everything is going to be weary, including the driver, and Grice could have his share of troubles, maybe with gearbox, maybe with steering, maybe with anything you like.
There's Grice in the background, and there's one of the Nissans. That's the second placed one that he's chasing. Right under the helicopter.
The Nissan team can surely thank the skills of Gary Scott if this car does come home to second. Up on the first lap there, after 3/4 of the first lap, he had a bit of a touch from behind and slid off the track, banged the nose into the fence, saved the car from skating right off the circuit, wrestled it back into the group of cars running up front, and lost only 2 or 3 positions.
We should look at the positions back behind these. We know well that Nissan's 1 and 2, Grice about 19.3 seconds behind in third place. Then it's the Brock Moffat Commodore, number 5, that's in fourth. It's them, Jim Richards and Tony Longhurst. Richards in the car at the moment, the BMW. That is in 5th place. 6th place is Graham Crosby. 7th place, number 36, Murray Carter, still doing well. And then it's Peter Williamson in the Toyota Supra, but he's a long way back, Williamson. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 laps on the race leader.
Terry Shield's doing a fantastic job here. He's dropping only about 2 seconds a lap over what you'd expect of the cars in the middle of the race. He's running on about 1 minute 55, just conceding tenths of a second here and there. 1 minute 55, you'd hope that the car could run about 53s, so with its front suspension problems, he's only 2 seconds a lap down on an optimum time. An excellent job by Terry Shield, and he's the newest driver to the team, and the team, Freddie Gibson, will be certainly pretty pleased with his effort this afternoon.
We were talking about young drivers, Will. Does it mean that we're starting to see a new crop come through to perhaps start pressuring the Moffats, the Brocks, the Grices, who have been around for, well,
Yes,
20
we are.
years, as we were
Yes.
saying before?
Yes, we're seeing a gratifying emergence of talent, definitely, and a lot of it coming through go-karts. And I was fairly disparaging about go-karts until a little while ago, till the ABC covered a couple of meetings. I've suddenly discovered what a superb training ground it is, not only for race drivers, but for young kids. Learning car control, getting their exuberance, their show-off sort of attitude perhaps to driving, off their chests, under controlled conditions, learning that if you overstep the mark, things hurt. And people like Glenn Seaton, Graham Ritter's son, lots of race drivers, Spencer Martin's son is in go-karts. And shortly at the Winton 300 race at Winton, of course, up near Benalla, in November, we will see Gavin Harvey, John Harvey's son. We'll see Bob Jane's nephew driving. So these people who I've unfortunately seen go through the first generation in their motor racing careers and now seeing their sons race. So I suppose it means I've been around a while. I don't feel as though I have. Let's have a look at the gap again. Alan Grice, 3rd place. Run through to Castrol Corner down the back of the track. Then there's that long back straight in front of Alan Grice. The kink. Then the blast up that back straight, now shorter on the new Sandown than it was on the old, because it turns hard left up the top here, switches back on itself into some very slow corners, and that's the car he's chasing.
It's been agonisingly in sight for Grice for quite some time now, but not getting much closer.
16.3 seconds, Grice, still away from that 3rd position.
Skyliner Fred Gibson getting the blue flag there, the faster vehicle.
They're both Fred Gibson Skylines, but he's not the bloke driving it. Freddie Gibson, there's Gary Scott in the pits.
Red Murray Carter actually in the light blue car there, as the Gibson car being driven by Seaton comes up behind it. So 5 laps to go for Glenn Seaton, and a similar amount now for the 2nd place car. Terry Shield at the wheel. A 1-2 coming up for the Nissan Skyline Turbo team. Carter about to perhaps be lapped again by Seaton.
Yes, there indeed is the Murray Carter car that's in 6th place. But it's 3 laps behind Nissan that's just gone, 4 laps behind the lead car and 3 laps behind 2nd place. Murray Carter's an old motorcycle raceman too. He these days is an old car raceman. But he did race motorbikes years ago. Peter Brock, Alan Moffat, sure anybody who was at Sandown in 1982 and who saw Alan Moffat guest drive John Harvey's car. John Harvey came up with us and did some commentary. Saw Alan Moffat denting lots of corners of the car and trying to hold out Peter Brock over the back section of the circuit, awfully fast and exciting bit off the top of the hill on the old Sandown track, and Peter Brock take to the grass and find a way somehow around Alan Moffat, determined that Moffat wouldn't have even that degree of satisfaction over him. As I say, we'll not forget that moment. The only time since that's the only time really in their careers they've got together, until late last year when the unbelievable was whispered and then seemed true and then was officially announced, and they teamed together. And they're just out of the top 3 at the moment, that being occupied by the 2 Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline turbos, and then the Graham Bailey, Alan Grice, Holden Commodore V8.
With 13 seconds to Alan Grice from the second of the Nissan turbos.
George Fury, delightful guy, first up at Surfers, and they finished there some 31 seconds in front of the opposition, who was Jim Richards, with Dick Johnson third. What a grand job Seaton's done. It's been a tremendous team effort, as of course it always must be for a successful team in endurance racing. Drivers certainly cannot do it alone. Even the drivers in good machinery can't do it alone. But it's a happy team. It's a team that knows what it's doing. It's been working tremendously hard for this success. And success it certainly looks to be. Surfers first, with one car retiring on the start line. Their opponents and the denigrators all said, "Chortle, Chortle, you've got problems." And as I say, next day they went out without having planned it and did a nearly 1,000 kilometre test run and said, "We're very, very happy with the way the cars are. They're reliable. The drivers were doing the right sort of times." And Alan Grice is 11.5 seconds behind. He's not really very far away from Terry Shield. But 126 laps have been completed by the race leader, this car. George Fury drove it through, and it's now being driven by Glenn Seaton. Alan Grice there, skating, scampering after second place. And Barry Seaton, dear oh me, that long face. It looks like an English bloodhound, doesn't it? But a lovely guy, won Bathurst in '65. And like Bob Holden, he's got a handicap in one leg, but a fine driver and very involved. That's, of course, Glenn Seaton's parents, Barry Seaton, Bo Seaton as he was known, and his mother. And very much involved, too, with the team preparation. They, too, like Freddie Gibson, have moved from Sydney to Melbourne and are an integral part of the sorting and the preparation that's made this a race-winning team. Coming round to complete 127. So 3.9 is 7.8 kilometres from 503 is 495 kilometres completed. A fair part of the job in a 500k race. Their lead over on the track is a lap and 7.55 seconds over their second team car, this battered looking monster, and its lead over Alan Grice in third is 11.18. So it's still not coming fast enough for Alan Grice, but look at the man work. This is lovely to watch. We need race drivers and we want people who have a go, and Grice is certainly one of those.
Fury still has the Glenn Seaton still has the pace running here. He's only eased off a little bit, probably knocked a few revs off. probably started braking a little bit earlier, but he's still going in 1 minute 54.5 seconds per lap, and he's going to do it easy.
Nissan's a fair way back in the Endurance Championship, and this will not be a good enough result, even the 1-2. I don't think I'll have to work the points out in a moment, but they started 20 points behind BMW. They were in third place in the series, 48 points to 28, with Alpha sandwiched between them on 36. And Richards, compared with George Fury, same thing, 48 to 28 points. So certainly Fury won't catch Richards. And we'll work out for you whether Nissan will catch BMW.
The main straight. Fury's car with Glenn Seaton driving it still sounds sweet as a nut. Last lap now.
A great drive, this one. Popped off first and second grid position. They would have occupied the front row, but for an electric flying lap by Peter Brock yesterday that took him from third to first grid position. But it didn't take very long for them to sort out the Holden and the Mobile Holden Dealer Team Challenge. And since then, they've run like clockwork, tremendously competitive despite that initial error from Gary Scott on the opening lap, and it really has become a clean sweep. Early yesterday, it was fairly obvious that the Volvo challenge, the Volvo Turbo to the Nissan Turbo, was evaporated when they missed the first practice session, then they missed the second. Commodores appeared to be in with a chance, but they're a heavy car on a stop-start sort of a track, and it was a big job for them. Dick Johnson out with the Ford Mustang fairly early, and really I think his heart's set in the Sierra, and the sooner he sees it, the sooner he'll be happy. The BMWs, counting on one pit stop, had to make two, but weren't on the pace anyway of these cars. Effort not only by the like by Australia, because it's Australian mechanics, engineers, team managers that have done the whole effort on behalf of Nissan Japan, and it's been superlative. And they're coming round to win the Castrol 500 race at Sandown. It's the third round of the Australian Endurance Championship. They won the second. They blew up when very well placed in the first at Amaru Park. Waiting for the team, the second place car, is Glenn Seaton. So the two cars over the line together, first and second. And it's first place to number 30, George Fury, but the car being driven presently by Glenn Seaton. Second place, a lap down to Gary Scott and Terry Shield. He too, Shield driving the car at this moment, but a sweeping victory for the Peter Jackson Nissan team over, in third place, Alan Grice and Graham Bailey. Bailey particularly doing a grand job, and Grice going down like a fighter. And there he is. And what do you reckon the heart of that 21-year-old would be like in car number 30 at the moment? Fourth place has gone to Peter Brock and Alan Moffat. Not yet. Yes, they have crossed the line for fourth. Fifth place to Jim Richards and Tony Longhurst, one lap behind them. And sixth place, a further lap back to Graham Crosby and Wayne Wilkinson. Well, a fantastic effort. 4 hours and 5 minutes roughly of racing, and Glenn Seaton did slightly more of the driving than George Fury, a couple of laps more. And let's go down though to the man that put it on to second grid position yesterday, car number 30, ran so well in the first session with Peter G.
George, Fred Gibson said earlier he wasn't interested in a form finish. He must have got pretty excited at the end as well and got on the radio.
Oh, I think so. I mean, they were a fair way ahead, so they could afford to do that, but it's great for the Peter Jackson Nissans to be up there, and everything went according to plan. They even had time to stop for a safety turn, which they didn't really have to. We could have done it with a one stop. So all in all, it's been a perfect day for us, and Peter Brock used to win this race and then win Bathurst, so I hope that this is a good omen.
So the first major enduro for you, how personally does that make you feel?
Well, very happy indeed, and I'm very happy to have Glenn Seaton as the co-driver, because he's done everything that was expected of him, and BP Visco sort of kept the engine going, and everything went perfectly with the car.
Did you have your heart in your mouth when Glenn took off perhaps a little prematurely and nearly took that safety churn with him?
Well, actually, I wasn't in the pits at the time, and I was a bit surprised that the car came in at all. So I sprinted back to the pits to find out what went on, and then I found out that one of the fuel men was trying to act as a flag behind Glenn's car. But all's well that ends well anyway.
It was doubted that the Nissans were able to take the endurance events. Did you ever doubt, as a lot of people did?
Well, of course, this is motor racing, and there's always an element of doubt. But we really had a lot of confidence in our car and in our team, and as things turned out, the confidence was justified.
So Gary Scott, after an altercation there at the start, coming through to make it a 1-2. Yep. Thoughts must go ahead to Bathurst now and a similar result.
Yeah, I think we're looking very good for Bathurst, and well, we can only cross our fingers and hope for the best.
All right, George, congratulations to the whole team. A great effort here this afternoon.
Thanks very much.